Hey everybody, this is Sean here at SPS Walkthroughs. This is the part 2 of Virtual Internal Network version 2014. So next thing we need to do is make a virtual machine for pfSense. So we're going to click on New. We'll call it pfSense router. Type is going to be BSD, version BSD. RAM size, let's make it a 256. We don't want to make a virtual hard drive right now. Continue. And before we start it up, we gotta change some settings around. So first off, we don't need a floppy in there. Display, keep that the same. So storage, this is important. Apparently when you leave it at IDE controller, it seems to have kernel panics. Not sure exactly why, but as soon as you remove the controller, add a SATA controller instead, and then we're going to create a new disk. Default is fine. Dynamically allocated, you always want to have that, and let's make it 3 gigabytes. And then we want another device, in this case a CD/DVD device, and we want to have our pfSense Live CD 2.1 release, and say OK. Disable audio. Okay, this is probably the most important part right here. Adapter 1 by default is NAT, but we want to change it to bridged adapter. So it's going to use the IPs that your host machine is using. So if your host machine is 10.0.0.22, this will be 10.0.0.24. Okay, that's fine. The Pro 1000 desktop, and then for adapter 2 we want to enable that, and for this one we want the internal network. So you can name this whatever you want. I'm just going to put virtual net, and you know, once again, same thing, Intel Pro 1000. Just make sure that whatever you name this internal network, that the rest of the machines that you're going to be creating have the same virtual network name. So don't worry about serial ports. You can disable the USB controller, and that should be it. So now we want to start it up. And go ahead and press 1 for booting to default. And you'll notice here, it might not be very apparent, but this is where you press I to launch the installer. Okay, here we're in the setup now, and we want to just go down to accept these settings. It's fine the way it is, and we want to do a quick and easy install, and yeah, it's going to erase the hard disk. That's great. In this case, we want to use the standard kernel. And you want to hit reboot. So notice that the default username is admin, default password is pfSense. So in a second here, we're going to want to eject the disk. Once we get the splash screen right here. And I think let's see. Just reset it here. Okay, here we go. So we want to press F1 to boot. And then press 1. For this particular walkthrough, we don't want to set up VLANs. Say no. And okay, so the WAN interface. It's asking for the WAN interface. We want that to be the one that we made bridged. Now, just to make sure, if you see here the MAC address of the device, if you go into the settings, network, you'll see it here, CCF. So we know that we want to go with the EM0 for the WAN. Type in EM0, enter the LAN interface. So the only one left is EM0, or EM1 I should say, and press enter. Optional, we don't have any optional interfaces, so just press enter. And do you want to proceed? Yes. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, the WAN is 10.0.0.26, and it has DHCP, which we want to take off, and then your LAN, which is 192.168.1.1. Now we want to set the interface IP addresses. So that we type in 2, enter. First one we want to configure is the WAN. So we're just going to say 1. So configure the IP version 4 address WAN interface via DHCP. We do not want to do that. So no. Enter the new WAN IP version 4 address. So let's make it 10.0.0.31 just because. Okay, the bit count 24 is fine. And WAN IP version gateway 10.0.1. This will be the this will be your physical gateway. So whatever, if you're using a router, you want to be putting that IP address in this spot. In my case, it's 10.0.0.1. So don't want any IP version 6 stuff. And I'm just going to press enter. And now it's going to configure it. So do you want to revert to HTTP as the web configurator protocol? So all it's asking is the interface for the pfSense router can be accessed through a web browser on another machine. And that's what the web configurator is. By default, you can access it through HTTPS protocol, but it's asking if you want to change it to just HTTP. For me, it really doesn't matter. It's just good to know if you need to use HTTPS, if you have your server set up that way, but it's just one less letter for me to type in, so I'm going to say yes. Okay, when it says you now can access the web configurator by opening the following URL, ignore that. You're not going to be able to access it through that. You're going to be using the LAN address. So if we press enter to continue, we see now that it doesn't say DHCP or anything like that. So we're going to press 2 again, and we're going to configure the LAN interface. I would recommend making the LAN IP significantly different than your WAN IP, just to not confuse yourself. You want to have something that is easily distinguishable. There's a lot of routers that use this 192.168.1.1, so I'm going to use 168.10.1. and 24 is a bit count. P version 4 gateway, just the same. .1 and we don't want a version 6, no DHCP, because now the reason why we're going to disable it on the LAN is because the Microsoft Server virtual machine, which we'll set up later, will act as a DHCP server, so we don't want to have two going on. So no. Okay, so this is the one that we're going to be typing in once we have our server up, which we'll go over in the next video. Enter. So you should have something like this once you've set up pfSense altogether, and you just got to make sure that this is still running in the background, and then in the next video we'll go over how to set up the server to communicate with this pfSense quote-unquote router, and we'll go from there. So until next time.